Welcome to the American Association of Universities November Journal meeting here in Green Valley. It is an honor for me today to introduce to you Anna Nygren, our AAUW state president. Anna has degrees in accounting and management from New Mexico State University. She was instrumental in providing the AAUW for Arizona public education funding for the 14 branches to enhance education in our local school districts. As we know, here in Green Valley, Continental School was a recipient of those funds. Anna has worked consistently toward equity for all. Anna has stated, although Arizona is 41% Hispanic, the population is not represented in our membership. Her goal is to have a more inclusive AAUW in the future. Please use your question and answer icon to ask questions during the presentation, and after the presentation, Anna will answer those questions for all of us. It is an honor, Anna, to have you with us. We welcome you, and we are grateful that you could be here with us in the Green Valley branch today.
Good morning. Thank you, Sharon. As Sharon indicated or said, yes, my name's Anna Nygren, and I am a first-generation American. My parents were immigrants, as were so many others. We all have our history, cultures, traditions that we hold dear. But along with some of the history, there are issues: racism, discrimination, and oppression. AAUW as an organization is struggling to recruit new members, both to attract men and women. We need to examine our expectations. We say we want diversity in our groups, yet we do not educate ourselves to better understand others' cultures and history. We expect them to fit into our preset notions, to just agree, fall in place with the way things have been done for years. Our fall forum that was held a couple of weeks ago started the conversation towards understanding the issues at hand. Picture this. The first image that comes into your mind when I say a person is a scientist, a chef, a surgeon. Did you think of a male figure for the job? This is an illustration of our unconscious biases. Unconscious biases are social stereotypes about certain groups of people that individuals form outside their own conscious awareness. Everyone holds unconscious beliefs about various social and identity groups. And these biases stem from one's own values and beliefs, which may have been passed on by cultural norms and prior generations' prejudices. People tend to organize social groups by categorizing, stereotyping according to their biases. Currently, our focus is on racial biases, which are conscious and unconscious. In fact, many people are saying that our nation is embroiled in systemic racism. The definition of systemic racism per the Cambridge English Dictionary is policies and practices that exist throughout a whole society or organization and that result in and support a continued unfair advantage to some people and unfair or harmful treatment of others based on race. This unfair systemic treatment also applies to people based on their gender. Today's discussion is about becoming aware of our own inner biases and beginning the journey towards equality across race and gender. This is not a journey about an organization, a country, a community. This is about each of our own individual dedication to change. It is up to each of us to dedicate ourselves to manifesting positive change individually. Systemic racism is present in every level of society. For example, the following excerpts from a study done by Ben and Jerry's, the ice cream corporation, has some data showing where racism of this kind infects the very structure of society, and at first glance, it may be difficult to detect. For example, 90% of the national wealth in America is controlled by white families. Latino families hold 2.3%, and Black families hold 2.6%. Not only that, but during the Great Recession, also hit minority families particularly hard. The wealth gap has increased. It is next to impossible to build wealth without steady and rewarding employment. But the Black unemployment rate has been consistently twice that of whites over the past 60 years, no matter what's been going on in the economy, whether it's been up or down. Perhaps, maybe higher education would help with that. Well, according to the data, Black people with college degrees are twice as likely to be unemployed as all other graduates. That may be because, as one study found, that job applicants with white sounding names get called back about 50% more of the time than applicants with Black sounding names, even when they have identical resumes. Another point in education, consider that while Black children constitute 18% of preschoolers nationwide, they make up nearly 50% of suspensions. Overall, Black students represent 16% of student enrollment and 27% of students referred to law enforcement. Given this, perhaps it should not come as a surprise that even though Black people make up 13% of the population, they represent about 40% of the prison population. Why is that? Then another issue, housing. When the government sought to make mortgages more affordable back in the 1930s, thereby jumpstarting the epoch of suburban living, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, and thereafter private banks, ranked neighborhoods all around the country, giving high marks to all white neighborhoods and to, sorry, turn my page, and to marking those with minorities in red as risky investments. Redlining, which essentially barred Black people and other minorities from sharing in the American dream of owning a home. Since home ownership is a pillar of building wealth, Black families were left behind. This practice was officially outlawed in the 60s, but still exists today. Cultural prejudice, whether subtle or bold-faced, is hard to change. We will be addressing this further in our January statewide event, now in the planning stages. Look for more details in the next few weeks. So in closing, it was Barack Obama who said, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are the change that we seek." Cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead's quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, the only thing that ever has." Let us be the change and move forward towards equality. Thank you. I'll
And
be happy to answer any questions.
um, when we were at the fall forum listening to the speakers, and especially Dr. Robbins, it
Mm-hmm.
was mentioned that we often don't realize our own historical systemic racism that started with the beginning of this country and the taking of land of indigenous people. Can you address that uh, a little bit for us to say it started with the indigenous people and then of course it went on to the African American people and it continues on today whether we recognize it or not?
Well, that is very true, Sharon. I'm not a history major and I'm not an expert on this, but just from what I have learned over the last, mostly, I guess I would say the last few months, I've been doing quite a few book study groups that address our systemic racism. You know, how it applies to, yes, how the early explorers, you know, took advantage of the native population, and then with the enslavement of people, and up to a point, it feels like to me that we have not really addressed this and not really learned from our history. And this, I guess, is one of the things that I would like for us as a group to start identifying where our own unconscious is driving us and how we can make that change. I'm not sure if that helps, but
It does. Thank you. There's a question also from one of our participants. She's asking, in Green Valley, we are a majority of white population. How do we engage women of other cultures within our membership?
well, I think Tucson has a lot of the same issues depending on what part of town you're in. And I mentioned this to some friends. And I think what we need to do is learn about these different cultures. Obviously, the Hispanic culture is very strong here in Arizona. So, and it was mentioned also at the forum when we did the breakout sessions, that if we do not learn about the cultures and be able to address the differences with respect, we're never going to get to know anyone else of a different culture than our own, because we are not ready to accept that. So my thought, and I have mentioned this to other people, is that we need to be willing to go in and learn, as opposed to willing to go in and tell somebody, we can do this for you. This is how we can do it better. It's, to me, it's the same thing that happened, thousands of years ago. The conqueror comes in and says, you're now doing what I say because this is how I want it done, as opposed to somebody that's been a culture that's been in existence for thousands of years. They've survived, they've been doing things, they've built things, and yet we come in and say, we can do this better. So I feel like that is where our first step is, that we need to learn to work with other cultures, other groups. There's a lot of groups we can work with that we can learn from, and they'll learn from us as well, but it has to be a give and take.
There's a question also that a survey was taken and it stated that the African American or Black children or minority children within the school system were fearful to go into that school system because of the harassment that they experienced within that classroom.
Well, I don't know how to address that, but I know that at times it feels like they are not given the time or well, how do I put this? This is difficult. So they're ignored most of the time, and they're not given the same time and effort that they do other children. So they may have other issues that they have to contend with, but just because they have a different last name or a different skin color should not be a reason for them not to feel that they are part of the education system.
There's another question, and this was addressed in our forum,
Okay.
that the degree requirement with AAUW does not afford us to be all inclusive. And I know that's a major discussion right now, Anna. Can you address that for us, please?
Well, yes, I think we addressed it as well in our group. And so I know that we have a lot of members that feel that this is something that means what AAUW stands for. But I think we're being short-sighted when we stick to the old rules. There are a lot of people that may not have been able to get a 2-year degree or 4-year degree or even higher for whatever reasons, but they have life experiences and they have had positions where they have had responsibility. Again, there's a lot of things we can learn from other people, and to exclude people because they don't have that 2-year degree. One of my friends pointed out to me that we would be excluding Bill Gates because he never graduated.
Another person asks about resources that you may want to articulate that you're possibly using in the Tucson area that would be advantageous for us here in Green Valley. I know White Fragility has been mentioned as a book for a resource, but I know others are as well.
Yes, well, like I said, the book club that I've been in, we did read White Fragility. Then we read American for Americans, or America for Americans, and that's about voter, not fraud, I mean voter, well, anyway, stopping people from voting because they're not white. And then now we're reading the book called Caste.
Yeah.
That one I feel still applies and will continue to apply for a long time, I'm afraid. I would love to be able to say that it doesn't apply, but it does. And it's a very subtle, I feel, it's a very subtle method of excluding people from the group. So, and you know, when it comes back to our organization, AAUW, when, and I think when somebody else mentioned this, is that when we bring in a person that's different than us, for example, a Black person or a Hispanic person, you know, we're trying to, you know, just like bombard them with, oh, we're so glad you're here. We just want you to be a part of us, but we're not ready to understand what makes them a person. And, you know, like I have said before, I don't, I don't like putting labels on myself or on other people. So when we describe someone as a person of color, Hispanic, Black, all of these different labels, we start putting them into those categories, whether consciously or unconsciously. And I feel like that does not help us move forward to better understand the person as a person. So so I guess when it comes down to what we're doing, well, we're trying to do a lot more things with the YWCA. Definitely, you know, I have done a few things there where I've been asked to speak, and if we do things again, I know that not everyone has the skills or the background, but we can all try to learn a few things from each other. So we may not all learn Spanish, but we can still try.
One of the questions also that came to us is um, when we had the forum, we talked about our title of AAUW. And you just mentioned, Anna, that we have men that are part of AAUW. So the name of a AAUW does not apply. And there's suggestions for the future of how that might be changed. Do you address that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you remember what Kim said when somebody brought that up, that, you know, the name change. I think that's the least of our worries. I would just say we're, you know, we're an organization to help families. And I think that's where we should start, is families, not women, not men, but families, because it's all encompassing towards equity, equality. And again, if you want to, you don't want to be picking groups. So we're going to be open to everyone, transgender. I mean, I think when you start putting those labels out there, then it makes it difficult for people to figure out, well, is this group for me? So I always feel like we shouldn't be putting ourselves in those kind of situations.
When you mentioned the book Cast, that was recommended to me by my dear friend Kathy Davison. And when I contacted our local library, they said, we have 80 copies, but you're 350th on the waiting list. And I thought, that's a telling story, isn't it? So I'm purchasing instead, because it sounds like it would be something that I would want to have in my own library.
Yes, I ordered it from Amazon just because I knew I wanted to keep it.
That's right. The last question that I would ask then is, with looking at the degree for AAUW that is now a requirement, will that be coming up for a vote again?
According to Kim and according to some of the other meetings that I've been on, yes, it will be coming up for vote. And I think since we are doing, everything is virtual, I think that's how they're going to want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Anna. It's so great to have you here. When Anna's been here for our interest group of Exploring Women's Culture, she came for International Women's Day last year, which was our last time for all of us to be together, right, Anna? And
Yes.
we had the most diverse population I've been in since living in Green Valley. But we are so honored that you would spend this time with us, Anna, and we'll keep on with this conversation. And we have talked about our own book groups, looking at how we can read the books that are important for our own resources. So thank you for being with us today. You continue on if you want with us. Phyllis Dibutine now will start with our general meeting, but we are all grateful. A round of applause for Anna.
Thank you so much. I really enjoy being with you all.
Thank you.
Hi, and thanks for sticking around with us for the business part of our meeting. I'm Phyllis Debretine. I'm a co-president along with Susan Peterson, who's in Madison, Wisconsin. I will say Anna's a very hard act to follow, but I'll do my best. After listening to her, I realize how much more we have to learn and how far we have to go. We don't have a lot in our business meeting, but there are some important things that you'll want to know. And also I can answer a few questions that people have had. It does seem odd to be meeting this way without people popping up to give reports. Doing it this way with me giving reports that people have handed to me feels a little bit like the radio programs my parents listened to when I was growing up as a kid in the prairies of Canada. Here are today's stock prices and grain futures, and next we'll give you the farm report. Anyhow, here are our announcements. Barb McAlpin reports that we have 121 members. Although this is 30 down from where we were before, there's still a lot of enthusiasm and people seem to be enjoying the programs. Karen Lewick announces that there will be no public policy meeting in November because the date would hit on Thanksgiving and she figured nobody would show up, but they will be meeting in December. Also, a bit of a feather in our cap, Arizona has been chosen as the host for the regional AAUW conference in 2022. Obviously, details will come next year. Another announcement, the Continental School override that was part of the election 2 weeks ago, which seems like it was months ago. And this is something that Green Valley AAUW supported. The initial results left everybody very confused, but great news, it did pass. And a reminder that this Saturday is the deadline to submit articles to Cynthia Surprise for the next Valley View newsletter that comes out December 1st. So if you have any news articles for her, please make sure you get those into her as soon as possible. I am so impressed with our meetings so far. They've had really good information. They make us think, and they really do educate us. And next month will be no exception. Our guest speaker will be Judge Ted Borick, who will speak on civil discourse at our meeting on December 15th. And the subject certainly couldn't be more timely. He'll address some of the difficult issues that confront our nation, our community, and our families, and he will promote understanding of opposing views. As Anna and Sharon mentioned, Fall Forum went off without a hitch, thanks to the great planning of Anna Nygren and Michelle Higgins and their helpers. I love Michelle's comment as we started off that we were going to muck around, and muck around we did. There were 4 great speakers, and then we broke into small discussion groups to talk about how we could come up with concrete suggestions as to how we as AAUW branches could take our advocacy to the next level, specifically as it relates to systemic racism and how we can work to negate this on AAUW and to become more inclusive. There'll be a more complete recap in the upcoming Valley View newsletter. They also recorded the program, and so we will put that connection in the Valley View newsletter, the next newsletter. And now for the news that you have all been very curious about. What is happening with LunaFest? And the answer is yes, we are holding LunaFest again this year. It will be on February 20th. Both the LunaFest films and the raffle will be virtual because of COVID. Interest groups will not be doing baskets as they've done in the past, but this year they're going to be asked, each interest group is going to be asked to come up with 3 or 4 individual items for the raffle. The LunaFest committee has met once. They'll be meeting again in December, and under the direction of Susan Kirk, and everybody is doing their part. There's a lot of enthusiasm for what we're doing and for what LunaFest will hold. We're up to the challenge for sure. Interest group leaders will be contacted for further details, and there will be more information in the Valley View newsletter coming out in just a few weeks. Again, that is it for our business meeting. Please join us on December 15th for our next program. And if you want to stay tuned for the farm report, go right ahead. I have nothing to report. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month.